From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We begin in Grenada, where voting is underway for the general election. Polls opened at 6 Tuesday morning and will close at 5 p.m. local time. Grenada's election involves 45 candidates from 2 major parties and 7 minor parties. There are also 2 independent candidates. By most accounts, this is really a fight between the new National Party, led by the incumbent, Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, and the opposition, National Democratic Congress, led by Nizam Burke. The CARICOM Election Observer Mission is on board to ensure fair and transparent elections. It says it has spoken to all key stakeholders and will closely follow the opening of the polls, right through to the announcement of the results. The polls will close at 5 p.m. local time in Grenada on Tuesday. Here's a look at what's at stake.
45 candidates are vying for 15 seats in the Grenadian Parliament. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell is ahead in the polls. If he wins, he could cement his place in history as one of the longest-serving Caribbean leaders. Dr. Mitchell has ruled for more than 2 decades, though not continuously. His new National Party won 6 of 8 general elections in the past 34 years. In the 2013 election, they won all 15 seats contested, the second time in Grenada's history.
We believe that our strongest currency is hope, and the NNP has bring hope to all of you in Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Mitchell is running on the platform of continued economic growth and not changing leadership at a time when the country is on the cusp of perhaps a major economic breakthrough with the discovery of oil in an exploratory well.
It means a lot for the future of this country. Sisters and brothers, one well. We have several more wells which are even more exciting than the one they just found. In other words, Grenada can be a massive supplier of oil and gas. With God's blessing, sisters and brothers, we will be marching on to victory, sisters and brothers.
The main opposition, National Democratic Congress, is led by Nizam Burke. His campaign promises call for better infrastructure, better healthcare, small business growth, and growth in the tourism and agro-processing industries.
The desire to stick with the substance is a necessary requirement for the development of our country. Anybody could get on a stage and whine if they want. But sisters and brothers, when you come to talk about the needs of our people, you must know what you're talking about.
On March 13, 1979, Maurice Bishop, leader of Grenada's left-wing New Jewel movement, led a revolution and seized power from Sir Eric Gairy. Successive governments since then haven't seen this date as something to celebrate. So the real intent behind setting this general election to coincide with the anniversary is confusing to many analysts, especially as it's the second time Prime Minister Keith Mitchell has chosen the date to hold an election. The first was around 28 years ago. Already some Grenadians have taken to the polls. Police officers voted on Friday. Most of them reported a smooth process. Election observers from the OAS and CARICOM have been in the country for a few days monitoring the situation on the ground.
Earlier, we spoke to Mikey Hutchinson, a talk show host in Grenada, about the main issues surrounding this election and whether the opposition has a fighting chance.
Availability of adequate healthcare facilities throughout the island. That has been a challenge for many governments, not just this current one, but for those in the past. And so many are looking forward to seeing that at least we place a lot of attention on healthcare. So I know that for both parties, they have been talking about somehow improving our healthcare situation here. Whether or not we're going to see that very soon, that's left to be seen. In the past 2 weeks, the National Democratic Congress have gained significant momentum with their campaign, particularly their social media campaign. They have been doing really good with that. There's also caution to the Prime Minister and his team with regards to the confidence that they would have and how that would inspire or not persons to come out on the polls that they've been warned against that by Peter Wickham and other experts who say that, hey, given the fact that your party would have won elections with all the seats, it gives you sometimes the unrealistic expectation that, hey, I could do this again, and probably you will not push as hard as you need to, and even you will not get your people to come out as they should. So you should not be too complacent. And whether or not they have been complacent, I don't know. Some are saying that they have put up a really good fight and they stand a really good chance of getting all 15 seats again. If you ask me, I'm not sure about that.
U.S. President Donald Trump has fired his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. The announcement was made on Tuesday morning. Mike Pompeo, the director of the CIA, will become the new Secretary of State. In a tweet, the president thanked Tillerson for his service and said Pompeo will do a fantastic job. Trump didn't give any specific reason for firing Tillerson. Tillerson has been in office for over a year and is currently on a 5-country tour of Africa. Political experts believe his removal may be linked to preparations for the historic meeting between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, which is expected to take place in May.
Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess it was okay.
Now we're hearing that Tillerson's ousting wasn't done in the most traditional of ways. Our correspondent Jorge Gestoso explains.
Rex Tillerson was caught by surprise by the firing of President Trump. He was supposed to bet on the long term, on the long run, in terms of his commitment to the Secretary of State position. According to different reports, he learned about his firing via Twitter, and most definitely in terms of politics, he was representing a moderate voice in the White House. He was in favor of the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump is against. He was also having different troubles regarding other issues, and therefore President Trump is saying that there was having no chemistry or not enough chemistry or not ideal chemistry, as he says that he does have with his replacement. We're talking about Mike Pompeo, the chief of the CIA. Precisely, President Trump is saying that he needed to have someone that was in exactly his wavelength in order to negotiate the next step that will be the possible meeting with the leader of North Korea. We're talking of Kim Jong-un. And President Trump said that he wanted someone like Mike Pompeo in order to be exactly in the same page. Worrisome in terms of where the foreign policy is going. We were knowing that there was disagreements between Tillerson and Trump, so much so that in a moment it was supposed to mention that Trump was a moron, something that he never officially denied, but also he didn't confirm. But most definitely there is another step in the White House that it continues to be perceived as a chaos, as chaotic, because in a permanent basis, at this point, around 20 of his close aides in the White House has left or been fired or being dismissed in the first years of presidency.
That report from Jorge Gestoso. So who's the new U.S. Secretary of State? Mike Pompeo graduated from West Point Military Academy and served in the U.S. Army in Europe at the end of the Cold War. In 1998, he set up a private security company, partly funded by the Koch brothers, who also helped to fund his election in 2010 as a member of the right-wing Republican Tea Party to the U.S. Congress for the state of Kansas. In November 2016, President-elect Donald Trump announced that he would be appointing Pompeo as director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And the ousting of Tillerson came less than an hour before Trump made his way to California, where he will visit a border fence with Mexico. The Trump administration has ordered the building of 8 prototypes for an eventual border wall near Tijuana. The prototypes can be seen over the current border fence, marking the international border between San Diego and Tijuana.
To make this visit at this area is like Trump is coming to have a laugh at Mexicans, at the country, at migrants, and to show that this presidential figure is having a tantrum and acting on a whim.
Ahead of this upcoming visit to California, hundreds of people protested against Trump in the city of San Diego. The rally was organized to show that the U.S. president is not welcome in California. Protesters say they reject Trump's racist and anti-immigrant rhetoric. They claim Donald Trump is making profit by criminalizing migrants. Our Pablo Perez is in Mexico City. He has the latest on anti-Trump rhetoric on both sides of the border.
Well, it is today that Trump is going to visit the 8 border wall prototypes in California, in the state of California, close to the actual border with Mexico. It is expected to cause several demonstrations, both in the state of California, which is recognized as a sanctuary state, a state that is sympathetic with migrants, and which is mainly Democrat, so it's against Trump. And in Mexico's side, on the city of Tijuana, there's going to be several demonstrations going all over the existing border wall, which starts in Playas de Tijuana and goes all over the way to Tecate. And well, there are reactions also in the rest of the country, where the general opinion is that the wall is well, nonsense, and notwithstanding the Trump's insistence that Mexico is going to pay for the wall, something that has been denied several times by Mexico's officials.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The National Liberation Army, the ELN, has announced that President Juan Manuel Santos will resume peace talks in Quito, suspended since last January 10th. News of the talks come just one day after Colombians went to the polls. Unfortunately, it was an election marked with allegations of fraud.
The National Congress will continue to be ruled by political elites, traditional parties, and the right wing, according to Sunday's elections results.
There was no renovation in the Congress. Around 90% of the old one remains, but with little changes in the distribution of the seats, divided into parties Cambio Democrático, Cambio Radical, the Conservative Party, the Liberals, and the U Party.
The party Cambio Radical has been questioned after links tied many of its members with corruption cases and paramilitarism. They now have twice the number of members they had in legislative power. Uribe's party, Centro Democrático, will have more representatives too. Analysts warn that this might have serious consequences for the peace agreement.
This will mean a great obstacle for legislative development. For example, problems for integral agrarian reform or for guarantees and political participation processes, which are very important in the final agreement with the FARC.
Status quo stays the same for political elites, but alternative and progressive forces got stronger.
We had 26 Congress members from alternative sectors. Now we have 42, including the 10 places offered to FARC in the peace agreement. I think that this Congress has a lot of challenges. The first one in talking to the country. I think that Congress has always turned its back to the people. They betray in some way the expectations people had.
The new Congress has some real challenges ahead. They still have to apply more than 80% of the peace agreements and advance the justice, political, and integral agrarian reforms. The road won't be easy. An important sector of Congress is still controlled by corruption and controversial members.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has cast doubt on Colombia's electoral process. The president questioned how his Colombian counterpart could criticize Venezuela when his own system is fraught with corruption.
Have you seen the Colombian elections? Santos only speaks about electoral guarantees, and when you see the electoral system in Colombia, you feel shame. Colombia was shouting, fraud, fraud. All the candidates screamed fraud. It's unbelievable. There was a 70% abstention rate.
President Maduro made his comment while commemorating the second anniversary of the Local Food and Production Committees, or CLAP. It's a social program aimed to distribute food to the Venezuelan people. The program was initiated to counter the economic blockade imposed by the United States and its allies. This boycott fueled shortages of food and medicine in Venezuela and promoted the black market. Maduro stressed the importance of CLAP as a tool to secure supplies for the Venezuelan people despite the external attacks.
The local food and production committees have to be a tool for the power of our people. A new power aimed to create conscience, to create organization, and to fight our economic battle. CLAP is the great instrument to neutralize the economic war and to win, in an immediate future, stability, peace, and social happiness. That is what we want for our people.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Venezuela says migrants leaving the country should not be classed as refugees. He'd rather they be called economic migrants. He explained in an interview with teleSUR on Twitter.
We can find different categories and situations. There are economic migrants, migrants related to binational families. When the situation is good in Colombia, they move to Colombia. When they are in Venezuela, they go to Venezuela. We have people that are crossing the border every day just to go shopping. There are people who are studying in the other side. Yesterday, for instance, I met Colombian people who are studying their postgraduate here in Venezuela. So they cross because maybe it's cheaper or maybe more convenient. You have a little bit of everything, a mixed population. That is why I say that it's hard to put a name in just one word to those who are migrating right now.
Mexican police have arrested a man they say is linked to the disappearance of 43 students. Eric Uriel, who is also known as La Rana, is believed to be part of a gang that the government says killed and burned the bodies of the students. He was detained in the state of Guerrero. Authorities believe Uriel was in contact with the victims before their disappearance. The students were from a teacher training college in Ayotzinapa. In Peru, the government is coming under fire for not protecting workers from the sun. Experts say there is a sore lack of public health policies for the most vulnerable.
Some Andean cities in Peru register up to 20 degrees of ultraviolet radiation. Exposure of this extent is considered extremely damaging to people's health.
We've seen a significant reduction of the ozone layer, thanks to the high levels of contaminants released into the atmosphere. Yet this damage is mostly caused by industrialized countries, and since we live at this altitude, we end up being directly exposed to the damage.
Those most affected are people whose jobs require them to be exposed to sunlight for several hours. The law states employers must provide proper protection for workers, but that is seldom enforced.
No.
No, I don't use any sunblock.
We don't buy our own sunblock. The company doesn't give us a hat or anything.
According to experts, nobody complies with the law because it hasn't been enforced for 6 years. They believe that is a reflection of the government's disinterest in promoting policies to improve public health.
The health and education ministries must be proactive. First, they must enforce the law and then spread information to educate people from a young age about the dangers of ultraviolet exposure, and in the case of cancer patients, provide proper care.
According to the Peruvian Society of Dermatology, the occurrence of skin cancer from UV radiation have increased tenfold in the past years.
Skin cancer is significantly more common than breast, uterine or stomach cancer. It's very prevalent, and we believe there are many cases that haven't been reported to health authorities and are being treated in private clinics.
Those who are most vulnerable live in Andean communities that receive the highest amount of UV radiation. Unfortunately, there are hardly any skin cancer prevention campaigns, much less access to specialized health services.
Time now for another short break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
In the last hour, the news has filtered through to this community that Bobby Sands has died after 66 days of hunger strike.
I declare that Bobby Sands has been duly elected to serve as a member for the third constituency.
Welcome back. Russia has asked for samples of the alleged chemical that the UK claimed was used to poison former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter. That's after UK Prime Minister Theresa May gave Russia 24 hours to clarify its involvement in the poisoning of the duo. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has denied any responsibility, and he says the UK is violating the Chemical Weapons Convention if it doesn't provide the samples.
So, before issuing ultimatums to report before the British government within 24 hours, it is better to follow your own obligations in accordance with the international law, in this case, with the Chemical Weapons Convention.
An assassination attempt on the Palestinian Prime Minister has failed. Here's a look at that story and other headlines from around the world.
Palestinian Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah's convoy has been attacked on his way to Gaza Strip. Hamdallah was reported unharmed in the blast, but several other people were injured. An explosive device detonated as his convoy passed through the Beit Hanun border. The office of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has released a statement claiming that Hamas were behind the assassination attempt. An outbreak of Lassa fever has claimed at least 110 people in Nigeria since the beginning of the year, according to the World Health Organization. Lassa fever belongs to the same family as Marburg and Ebola. The WHO has said the epidemic has reached record highs this week.
We are recording an outbreak that is unprecedented. We've not had it like this before. As at the end of February this year, we have had the number of positive cases far more than the total number of positive cases we had in 2017.
Oscar Groening, known as the bookkeeper of Auschwitz for his involvement in the Holocaust, has died at the age of 96. He was sentenced to 4 years of prison in 2015 for his role in the murder of over 300,000 people at the Auschwitz concentration camp in Germany. He was one of the last people to be convicted of Nazi genocide.
We've come to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.